Welcome to Over the Bar, Craig. How are you?
Over the bar. I'm
Over
well.
the Bar, yes.
I like the name.
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been months.
Months. So, I don't know. Where do you want to start? What's new? What's new and exciting? Been doing anything fun?
Oh, yeah, all the motorhome shit.
Oh, motorhome shit. That's right. You just bought a motorhome, didn't you?
Yes. An old bus.
And how's that going?
Oh, great.
Seems a little bit of...
If you wanted a project, it's great.
yeah. What year is it?
98.
1998.
Yeah.
Triple E Empress or something?
Triple E Empress, yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And what are you doing with that? Where are you going? What's the plan?
Well, not going anywhere right now because the jacks won't come up.
You're getting a guy to come check that out, though, aren't you?
Yeah, Wednesday morning. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what is your plan with the motorhome once it's up and going?
Head south.
Where are you going?
Oh, hopefully to Mexico.
Mexico?
Mexico.
Like for the whole winter?
That would be nice. Yeah, probably won't be this year, but in subsequent years.
So you got a plan of a place where you're going? Let's in on it.
Well,
What's
with
the
any
secret?
luck, we'll make it as far as Barra de Navidad.
Okay.
I guess it's Barra de Navidad.
And you've been there a few times.
Yeah, probably 3 times now.
Oh, sweet. This is going to be your first time driving down, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what kind of challenges does that pose for you?
I have no idea. It'll be a long drive. It's like, I think was it 3,700 kilometers one way or round trip? I don't remember.
I think when we looked it up, it was 2,900 kilometers one way.
One way. Okay,
So
there
that's
you
going to
go.
put you about, what, 7,000 miles total? Somewhere in that area?
Or, well, about 7,000 clicks, so it'd be what, 4,200 miles or something?
Yeah. A long ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're planning on staying there for a month?
Well, no, ideally we'd go down for, I don't know, 3+ months.
So when would you leave?
Well, when we can go for the full time, I would expect we could hopefully get out of here by October, November, and come back maybe in March or April.
What about the winter driving? I guess if you're leaving in October, you're okay.
Theoretically, I guess unless the winter hits early, but
Yeah. So also, you're a sailor, right?
I try to be.
Yeah. Where did you actually learn how to sail?
Oh, my God, that goes way back. My father built a 38-foot motor sailor in our backyard.
Built one?
Built one.
From scratch?
Yep. Ferro cement concrete boat.
What?
Yeah.
How do you build a cement concrete boat in your backyard?
Well, you have to build all the ribs out of steel, and then you put what's called nail rod. You run it the length every so often. Then you have to put 4 layers of chicken wire on the outside and 4 layers of chicken wire on the inside. And then you have to have guys that really know what they're doing with concrete apply the concrete to the chicken wire, and then let it cure, and then start finishing the boat.
And how big was this boat?
38.
38 feet.
Yeah. It was
How did you get it out of the backyard?
very, very carefully.
So this was a total 100% concrete sailboat,
Yeah. Except for the superstructure, that was wood.
being the cabin. And
Yeah,
all
the
that.
cabin top and that, yeah.
Okay. And how many years did that take?
Started when I was 12, and he was finished when I was 17. So 5 years.
5 years, start to finish. You must have worked on that a lot.
Oh, my God. So many hours of applying hog rings by hand to each layer of chicken wire.
What's a hog ring?
It's like a staple in a sense. It comes in a row like you would get staples, but they're heavier, and you have a little pair of pliers that has a groove cut in each end, and you grab one hog ring, you break it off, and you stick it through the chicken wire around that nail rod, and then squeeze.
Okay.
And there was 8 layers of chicken wire, 4 on the outside, 4 on the inside.
Wow. And did you help him build this thing?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So was your dad was a sailor then?
He was a merchant marine. So he was like working on freighters and that kind of stuff, sailing the world, delivering goods. And
Oh, really?
yeah.
And that would have been approximately what year?
Oh, what would that be? 12. I was born in 56, 66, so 68, I guess.
68. And then you guys launched this boat together?
Yep, 1975, I think was the date it got launched.
And he taught you how to sail?
Well, no, while the boat was being built, we took sailing lessons out of Mosquito Creek Marina in North Vancouver, and then went from there into English Bay, and then in the wintertime taking sailing lessons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did that bring you up to like a captain's stick? This is
Oh,
a
no.
38-foot cement boat. I'm thinking you got to know what you're doing with this thing.
Yeah, well, with that course that we took would have given you what's called competent crew, so you understand the basics of sailing and all the terminology and how to sail with the wind, right, or into it or whatever. Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, and then I didn't sail for a number of years, and then in about 2001, I bought a Chrysler 22-foot sailboat, trailerable.
22 foot. So that have a cabin in it? You could sleep in it
Yeah,
and stuff?
yeah.
Okay.
You couldn't stand up. You'd have to bend over to move around in the cabin. But I had a little dinette and a V berth and a porta potty and that kind of stuff.
And is that when you got a captain's license, don't you?
No, I never got my captain's license, but I did take a number of courses, offshore sailing courses, navigation, and that kind of stuff. And then to get your captain's license, you have to have a certain amount of sailing time. And the longest trip I did was when I came back from Hawaii. Helped bring a boat back from Hawaii.
And how many miles is that?
We sailed 3,305 nautical miles. And a nautical mile is 1.2 statute miles.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question. So, and how many crew were on that boat?
There was eight of us all together.
And what was your job?
Well, everybody took turns doing everything. Like you had to spend 20 minutes on the helm at a time. There was 2 watches of 4 each, so there'd be 4 below sleeping while there was 4 up top.
Can you explain a day and a night on the boat then? Like what are you in? You're out in the middle of nowhere.
Literally, yes.
Is the sea calm? Is it rough?
Well, it was pretty rough. We had probably 35 knots of wind for like about 10, 11 days. And big seas, like 14-foot swells and that kind of stuff. And the white caps were getting blown off by the wind, that sea foam kind of thing, the sea spray or whatever.
Okay. Were you freaked out at all?
Oh, God, no. The worst thing, not the worst thing, the weirdest thing was sailing at night. Because it actually felt like you were sailing downhill and to the right.
Downhill and to the right.
Yeah, it felt like the boat was always going downhill and to the right.
Why is
For
that?
me. I don't know. Well, you have no... it was quite cloudy most of the time coming back, so you had no moonlight, you had no starlight, you had no lights. Every once in a while you'd see a glow off in the distance from fishing boats that would be out there, or a freighter that was passing by, or
So would that be like pitch black then?
pitch black. Yeah.
So the only way you knew which way is up and which way is down is because you weren't wet.
Right.
So what was the scariest moment then doing? And how long did that take you to come back from
20 days.
20 days? Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the scariest moment?
Scary it was exciting, but scary was we were flying a spinnaker. We had about 25 knots of wind, and the spinnaker is 1,500 square feet. So that's that big, large parachute sail.
Off the front of the boat.
Yeah, it's got the head of the sail is hauled up the mast, and then the rest of the sail just floats out there, and you have 2 sheets that you control the sail with, and a boom or a spinnaker pole that holds one side out or the other, and when you jibe, you move it from one side of the boat to the other.
My experience on a sailboat was on your personal one located in Vernon at the yacht club there. That was, how big a boat is that?
27.
27 foot. And I remember running the jib,
Yeah.
or no, spinnaker. The spinnaker is the big one that goes out the front.
Well, there's the foresail, which is typically a jib, which can be a genoa, which is larger than a jib, but it's still a jib.
That would be like 2 sails then.
Well, no, like every sail has 3 points on a what they call a Bermuda rig, which is what these boats are, and so it has a tack and a head and a clew. So the tack,
All on the same piece of material.
Right.
So it slides onto that, what do you call that big bar that swings
well,
around?
that's the mainsail. That's the boom.
Okay.
Yeah, but the jib has a tack, so it's attached to the bow on one corner. It's attached to the head of the mast on the other corner, and then the clew is the one that has the sheets attached, and you haul that back and forth for your tacking and that.
Okay, so when we were out on your boat, Rebecca, your first mate, would have been the one. Hey, first mate. She would have been the one running the spinnaker, right?
Well, I don't know if we flew the spinnaker with you guys.
Yeah.
Did we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah,
I
she
guess
would have
my
been.
question is, when you're flying or say not flying, sailing back from Hawaii, how big a boat was that?
That was 44 foot.
So how did you control a 1,500 square foot spinnaker?
Well, same thing. You have the head of the sail up at the mast, and then you have the two clews. It doesn't have a tack, so it just floats out front, and then you use the spinnaker pole to hold one side out to help catch the wind, and then so that line off that clue becomes the guy, and the other one is the sheet, and so then you use the sheet and the guy to help steer the sail out front of the boat to keep it moving. So you're running downwind.
One person.
Pretty much, yeah. You've got usually you have the guy cleated off, and then the sheet you can control, usually with a winch when you got something that big and that kind of winds.
And by cleated off, you mean his ass was strapped to the deck?
Yeah. Well, the line is cleated off. So
Was he strapped down?
no, we were just sitting in it was a daylight, and we were moving along, and the other watch was down below making some food or whatever, and we were cruising along, and the seas were down a bit, but probably 8-foot swells and that sort of stuff, and we had come over this swell top, and we started coming over the other end, and a odd wave came and hit the quarter end of the boat and turned it sideways, and the spinnaker was out that opposite side, so the sail started to come around to the side of the boat, and what started pulling the boat over, and so then the boom was also out the side, and we were right over on the side, and the boom was cutting through the face of the wave on the other side. Probably 3 feet of the boom was in the water, so the boat was like going over.
Okay. And what did you do then?
Well, as we started going over this, and we got this kick, so I was turning the boat at that point. I guess I was turning it to starboard, and to try and bring the boat back, so get the wind behind it, bring the sail around to the front, because it floats out there. And so as we're coming over the wave, I've got the wheel turned all the way to starboard side, the right side, but you got a 1,500 square foot sail and a rudder that's probably, I don't know, maybe 30 square feet. So you can imagine the difference in leverage. And so I had the wheel hard over, and the guy sitting down beside me, he was what I call a lower level instructor. He was upgrading his schooling to be a higher grade teacher or instructor or whatever. And he's got the guy and the sheet, and he decides to tell me to turn the wheel the other way. And as I've got it hard over to starboard, right, and the boat's still starting to round like this to the port side, and so he says, "Turn the wheel the other way," and I'm like, "Really? You what? Turn the wheel the other way? Because this doesn't make any sense." And he says, "Turn the wheel the other fucking way." So it's like, okay, you're the instructor. So I turn it hard to port, and of course, then the boat really carved into the face of the wave, and that's when it started to go over. And the skipper was down below, the guy that owns the boat. And when we turned over, everybody went sailing across the cabin down below to the other side of the boat. One guy had this amazing rainbow across his back. He went back first on the other side of the boat up against a bunch of the woodwork down there. And then the skipper crawled out of the companionway and said, "Let go of the fucking sheet." Or let go of the guy. And then that allowed the sail to come around to the front of the boat, and then we could steer it again.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we put the spinnaker down.
Because that was a bit too much.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
On this entire trip, there's 8 of you on board. So at any time, there's 4 up on deck and 4 sleeping. Is that how you guys do it?
Right. Yeah. Sleeping was tough because the hull is only like 3/4 of an inch thick or whatever, maybe an inch thick at the most. And so we were on like one tack for half the way, like 1,500 miles, and then tacked the boat and went the other 1,500 miles. And my bunk was on the low side, so the water, you could always hear the water rushing by, even when you put earplugs in to try and sleep. So, and then of course you got jack lines on, so if you're having to move up and down the deck as you're moving around, it's like a carabiner attached to a tether. The tether is attached to your life vest, and then there's jack lines that run the length of the boat on the deck, and that carabiner goes around that jack line.
So
and
you
so
might
as you
hear
move
that
forward,
dragging all over the place.
yeah, it's just
So what you're saying is you didn't get a whole lot of sleep.
not a whole
20
lot of
years.
sleep. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you did that trip?
Oh my God, that was in 2006, so I would have been 50. It was the year I turned 50. I left here. I can't remember now. I got back, I think, just before my birthday, which is August 25th. So I think I got back around the 20th, and so I think I flew out of Vancouver on the 17th of July, and then we had to wait for a few days because this is the Vic Maui race, right? So these boats enter the race, and they have race crews, and you pay to go on these things, right?
This was a race you were in?
We were on the return crew.
Okay.
Yeah, so the guys that have their boats, and they look for crew, and the crew come on board, and they race to Hawaii. They go to Lahaina, Maui, and then they fly home, and then the skippers have their boats in Lahaina, and they're from, British Columbia or Washington or Oregon, California, and then they got to get their boats back. And so some of these guys have big bucks, and they have those boats that like a freighter, and they have a big flat deck, and they submerge the boat, bring the boats on, brace them, weld the braces, and then raise the boat again, and then take their boats back. But other guys look for return crew, so I was part of the return crew.
Okay, so you're on your way back, 20 days. You're going to land in Vancouver.
We stopped in Victoria first,
Victoria,
yeah.
okay.
And then dropped some of the guys off, and then we basically, the skipper had been, he was in the race before. That took 17 days, I think, for them to finish the race. They ran out of wind when they got to Hawaii, and so it took a little longer, and then we had to provision the boat and then set sail, and that took us 20 days. Normally you go from Hawaii and you head towards Japan and then up towards the Aleutian Islands and then come back down into the Inside Passage. And that it's like because at that time of the year in the summertime, there's always a big high that is out there circling around, and so you tend to follow the winds. And the skipper was trying to get home faster, so we went so far north towards Japan, and then we cut through the high, and then it became very damp and cold and not much in the way of wind. So we motor sailed for probably most of the other 1,500 miles.
So this was, you landed in Victoria and then had to go.
Then from there we went to Vancouver. The boat
Okay.
was docked in Cole Harbor in Vancouver.
Okay. And that was that last time you were on that boat?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And then you went and bought yourself a boat after that, I'm assuming?
Well, like I say, in
Yeah. Oh, you had the short
2001, I
one,
had
yeah.
bought that 22-foot Chrysler, and then I joined the yacht club in 2005, the Vernon Yacht Club, and then I got on the executive that fall, and then in December they told me I was going to organize our boat show for 2006, which would have been in late April, and so I was in January. I was getting ready to organize the boat show and looking for ideas to, exhibitors and that kind of thing. And we, as I was, I started looking through the, what do you call it? The Vancouver Boat Show. They're there every year in, I think, early February. So I was looking at who they had for exhibitors, and as I was going through their exhibitors, I saw this that said offshore sailing experience. So I got distracted, and so I checked into that, and I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. So I applied, and so I was approved to go, but I had to take a first aid course and had to take a 5-day cruise and learn in the Gulf Islands, and so that was on another. I don't remember the make of that boat, but it was a 45-foot beautiful sailboat that this guy had bought and brought back from Hawaii himself, and then and then that was it. And then basically we left in July.
So you were a crew on that one. You actually got paid to go on that, or
No, I had to pay.
Oh, you had to pay to
Yeah.
crew the boat.
Yes.
Okay, so was that to gain more experience?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got a logbook that has that. I mean, I haven't kept it up, for all the sailing that we've done at the Vernon Yacht Club and races and that sort of stuff and whatnot. But
So would that have been shortly before I met you then? When did you do that? What year?
2006, and I think we met you guys in 2009.
2009, so just a few years before that.
Yeah.
Because, you were, well, actually, I'd been on one sailboat before that, And yeah, that was a January sale. That didn't turn out very good. It was a little cold out there. And then we went with you guys, and then we started crewing on your boat for a while.
Yeah, yeah, we took in some regattas and that sort of stuff on the lake.
Yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah, remember the 360?
Yeah. Have you ever had anybody do such a great 360 before?
Not before and not after. I think we tried one intentionally, actually. We were on a race on this Preetz boat this year. We're crewing for him, and he wasn't paying attention on the tiller, and then the jib got backwinded and the boom changed, so we just did a 360.
Oh,
Pull
another
a Carmen.
accident.
Pull a Carmen.
Was it as good as mine though?
No, it was not.
No, you didn't-
it
you
was
almost
not.
didn't go in the
We
drink?
didn't have the same kind of winds that we had when you did it.
Yeah, there was a lot of wind. I remember another time we were out sailing with you and Rebecca. Harden the main, harden the main. Almost took us over sideways, and that's when Renee broke her finger, I believe.
Yes, I
'cause-
landed on Renee. We were down below getting drinks and
That's right.
and snacks, I think.
All right. By the way,
On her thumb, yes. It was.
by the way, don't drink and sail.
What? That's sacrilege.
Yeah. So we did that for what? 2 years with you guys?
I think so.
Yeah, about 2 years. And then what happened? Oh yeah, we moved out here, and then life got in
Then
the way.
things changed.
Things changed. What came along? That COVID came along.
Oh, yes, good old COVID.
What do you think about that? That shit. That's just bullshit.
It's the best thing that ever happened.
What?
Oh, sure.
How
If
do
you're
you
a
figure?
bureaucrat, they had more to control, more things to tell you what to do, how to live your life. They loved that. So it was great for a bureaucrat.
A COVID-ocrat.
Yeah, yeah.
Call it that. So, well, there's my dog. Anyway, what do you think the government gained by doing what they did?
A lot more power.
In what way?
Control over our lives. They now have tested that telling you what you can and cannot do and how you can live. People succumb to that. A lot of people tried to go against it and tried to convince you had to get vaccinated. If they didn't, they called you names and bullied you. And then they wonder why we have bullying in schools.
Absolutely. We're back. And for anybody who's listening out there, might hear some little noises from the side ground. That's Rebecca. She's our official looker, upper, Googler. Right? Chatterbox. There you go.
That's it.
So government overreach.
Yes.
Explain yourself.
Well, there's no shortage of people in this country, for sure, let alone around the world, that figure they have the answer for how you should live. And they think as far as if you differ from that, then you need to change.
So what did that have to do with COVID, though? Do you think COVID was planned or unplanned?
Well, I don't think it was planned in that sense. I mean, I think it was a real thing, for sure. I mean, I tested positive for COVID, and I didn't have it too bad. Rebecca had a lot worse than I did with the aches through the body like you had and that kind of stuff, and I just had like a bad cold and didn't last very long. But I think it was a real disease. I mean, I don't think there's anything doubtful about that. It's just the way they handled it from the standpoint of not allowing you to do anything unless you had the vaccine, and the vaccine is, in my opinion, was relatively untested compared to other vaccines, and of course they started throwing names around. They called you COVIDiots and anti-vaxxers and typical bullying tactics, and then here's these people that are supposed to be our quote-unquote leaders that are carrying on in that capacity, and then you wonder why you have bullying still going on in schools and stuff like that. I mean, they're setting the examples.
Yes. Sure. So I do remember Trudeau getting on camera saying that those that are not or those who did not get vaccinated were less than human as far as he was concerned. He didn't use those words, but did he call us misogynists or something like that? Those the unvaccinated, and they should have no rights.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's when they were coming up with the term that I heard a lot, and that Farnsworth or whatever from BC here used it, and I think EB did as well, and I'm certain Trudeau did. I can't say for sure with respect to him, but COVIDiot was a certain favorite phrase for people that didn't want to get vaccinated.
Well, and I mean, it was Bonnie Henry who got on there and said, follow the science. So for those people that I believe that didn't get vaccinated, they were trying to follow the science. Because there was a lot of science out there that said, that how do I want to put this so that we don't get kicked off YouTube here. They were following the science, and there was a lot of science out there that was proven that they really had no science behind the shots. They didn't have enough. They had a cohort of people that they had given it to, but as we found out later, as Pfizer was releasing their paperwork, there was a lot of stuff that they didn't tell us ahead of time. So, having that being said, what is your idea of why the government kept pushing? What was the reason behind it? Why were they trying to do this? I think it was a big experiment.
Oh, I agree with that part. It was a big experiment. Like I say, I mean, people that there's all different kinds of individuals and how we conduct ourselves and what we believe and whatnot. And there's some people that believe in control and that people should live a certain way. And if you differ from that, that should be okay. It's the same as, you vote for NDP or Liberal or Conservative or whatever. You should be respecting other people's opinions and not try and force upon them your beliefs, whether it's religion or anything like that. Again, it's just conjecture and what a lot of these people would say is conspiracy theories, but an experiment I would agree with that, for years, I remember from the time I was a kid, they kept talking about we're going to have this pandemic. It's going to come. And there was the bird flu and that
H1N1.
Yeah, and all those kind of things, and they never developed into anything. So I think to some degree, those people that are in those positions, they wanted to have a pandemic that they could deal with and test their theories and that sort of stuff.
I do know that the government was working on a pandemic preparedness system for one, that if it ever did come out. So I do know they were doing that. So was this, because I don't think they really knew what COVID was when it came out. I think they were watching and seeing what was happening over in China, where it apparently broke out from the Wuhan Institute of Virology there, or in that general vicinity. So did they just use that as, okay, we've got something here, let's go for it, let's try out this thing, the scenario that we've set out and see if it works?
Yeah, I would largely believe that. I think that they needed to have a pandemic. They needed something to test their theories and how do we, cause they, back in the Spanish flu or whatever the heck it was called, 100 years ago, that was a bad one for sure. And so we're going to probably someday get another one like that. And there were a lot of lives lost with COVID and that sort of stuff. I mean, although I do remember reading one thing in the U.S. That a hospital got paid $10,000 per patient if they died from COVID. So it makes you wonder if there was an incentive to say their death was caused by COVID, right? I mean,
there was a lot of speculation that with the death certificates, if COVID was part of that it was fact that the hospitals got paid a little extra. And I mean, they got paid more for people who went on ventilators. And I believe I know what I'm talking about here. I have read that.
Right.
Has anybody ever admitted to it or not? I don't know. At any rate, so this is part of the lead up to more government control. I mean, British Columbia had the most restrictive rules upon us in all of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What was the point? So if it's a federal government that we thought was trying to do this, why would BC be worse than the rest of the country?
Well, each province has certain powers that the federal government cannot exceed or dictate. So provinces do have their realm of authority, so to speak, and so then that gets into it. I mean, I think that each province has its own healthcare act and that sort of stuff. So there's a differentiation there across the country, and then of course the federal government collects the taxes and then doles out to the provinces a share of that for healthcare. And if you're not towing the line, then you don't get your share of the healthcare money. So they have some influence on the provinces as to what they do, but each province can do largely what they want, in my understanding, from a healthcare perspective.
Okay. And I guess I should correct that last statement when we were talking about the hospitals receiving more. I don't know if that was true in Canada,
No, I don't believe it was.
but there was a lot of chatter about it in the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, because they got a lot more, it's more private healthcare across the board. I don't know. I'm sure there's some public hospitals and that sort of stuff, but here, of course, it's a public healthcare system.
There, and if for anybody who actually wants to know more about this, they can read a book called it's a Dr. Fauci inspired Robert Kennedy.
Oh, the current,
Yeah, he's independent running for the U.S. presidency.
Right.
He wrote a book, and I think what was that called? Something about Fauci. If you just go, sorry.
The real Fauci?
Yeah, I believe it's called The Real Dr. Fauci or something like that. But it's a very interesting read. And if anybody wants to know the real behind the governments, and this comes from Robert Kennedy is a lawyer who's been suing the EPA and stuff like that for years over environmental problems and hazards. So he's a very smart person, and he delves deeply into this in this whole way Fauci handles stuff and the links between Fauci and Wuhan Institute of Virology and big pharma companies.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if anybody wants some real
Follow the money.
follow the money, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Craig, your background is you've spent the last 40 years in mortgage.
I guess it's got to be close to that. I started in mortgages in January of 1983, so I guess that would be pretty darn close. 40 some odd years, eh?
You're older than 40. What?
That's Rebecca.
Not
Yeah.
really.
So, let's talk about the housing crisis. Give us
Housing
your
crisis.
what's going on. Why has housing gone up so much? How are young people ever going to afford to get into a place? And where do you think it's going to go?
Well, how this started, I think there's a couple of things there. I mean, certainly the federal government has incredibly increased the number of immigrants coming into the country. Nothing wrong with that. We need more people in this country. We need, our population, if you can say the natural population is aging out and that sort of stuff, and people aren't having as many kids and blah, blah, blah. So we need more people in here. So bringing in new immigrants that want to come and live here, and that's a noble cause for sure. The problem is if you bring them in too fast and your housing stock isn't increasing, then you get into this situation, of course, where it drives prices up for both rent and purchasing.
But when somebody immigrates to Canada, they get a certain amount of money. The government gives them. I don't remember what it's called. Do you know what it's called?
Well, I think there's immigrants that go through a process to apply to come and live and work here, and then you have refugees and people like that haven't necessarily gone through the process, and they just show up here, and then there's some sort of allowances or whatever that they give them. They set them up with some cash and housing allowance and food, put them up in hotels because there's no housing, and that's all paid for by the taxpayer.
So where do those people live? Was there at the point when they started having all this immigration come in? Was there enough housing for people at that point?
Well, I would think not. I mean, the population, it was still increasing prior to the immigration, just at a slow rate. The birth rate was still ahead of the death rate, not by much, and so now you bring in all these new immigrants, and they're trying to find a place to live. And then I think one of the things that fueled that compounded that was the fact that governments all across this country have been increasing at incredible rates the number of on their payrolls. Trudeau got elected in 2015, and up till 2023, I think it was, he added 108,000 people to the federal payroll, and then
108,000 people.
108,000 bodies paid for by the taxpayer. So, and of course, you get those jobs. Their pay is their compensation package is very generous. They get paid certainly more, for the average worker. Maybe if you get some brainy guy or whatever, brainy gal that gets a job, maybe they would have a comparable pay in the private sector or whatever, but it's the benefits that come on top of that. You know, if you are working for yourself or for a private company, most small companies don't have a pension plan. So you have the ability to contribute to your RSP, and you put $1 in there, you have $1, and it makes earnings on it. But a federal employee, or well, let's back up, if you work for someone like the Royal Bank of Canada, they probably have a matching program of 50 cents. You put in $1, they put in 50 cents. So now you have $1.50 that's working for you. And a government worker gets 116% return. They put in $1, the taxpayer puts in $1.16. And so what that does is they retire on average at the age of 52. They don't have to work till 65 or more. Or
Government employees they retire at age 52.
on average, yes.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, if there's people that go through a divorce situation and then the pensions get split, then they might work a little bit longer. But they're in a situation where their pension is growing at a very attractive rate. And then they're guaranteed 80% of their last 5-year average wage. So if they retire and they were making $100,000 a year, at 52, 53, they can get $80,000 a year to sit on their ass. And then they go out and work, you know, usually they contract back to the government to do something else.
But wouldn't, and they still keep that 80%?
Oh yeah, they get 80% of whatever their 5-year average, last 5 years of work.
Plus, and well, I guess they're still in the tax bracket. They still get taxed on that then.
They would still get taxed on that, of course, yeah.
So how does that, so with all 108,000 new employees, is that per year or was that over his term so far?
That's over the term from 2015 to I think it's 2023, I think.
So how does that increase property values? Like, I mean, everything's gone up so extraordinary here in Canada. I know everybody's trying to blame Trudeau and the Liberal government. Is it because of them that this happened and 108,000 people got in there and they can go out and buy a house? But I mean, we're talking a country with almost 40 million people now.
Right, I think a little over 40 million.
Yeah. So how does 108,000 people drive the price of housing up? You know, really a 60 or 40, 50% increase since 2015, which is what 9 years.
Right, but that's only one level of government. Then you have every province, and every province has added numerous amounts of employees. I read something, I wish I had my iPad here, because I do have it saved on my iPad. The provincial government, over a period of time, the employment, what was that now? The employment rate was low, job hiring was high. New jobs created in the province over whatever period of time. And the Fraser Institute broke it down, and out of the new jobs that were created, only 3% were in the private sector. The other 97% was the government sector.
Government jobs, 97% of
In the
jobs
province of British Columbia.
was created by the
and that takes into account the province itself, or the city of Vancouver, the city of Vernon, the regional district, wherever it may be.
Okay.
So all those people suddenly that were working or not working, whatever they may be doing working at a job that were making less money and no pension, now all of a sudden they've got a government job. They don't have to worry about the future. They don't have to worry about trying to, budget themselves to stick some money aside into their RSPs, right? So now all of a sudden they've got this job. They still have to save their down payment, of course, but then if their parents have the ability to help them, then you have all this influx. And now again, like I say, you've got people coming in from, was it over 1 million people they brought in last year through immigration and refugees and foreign workers.
Somewhere I heard it was 3 million.
Yeah, I don't know that it was that high. What I read was certainly over 1 million, but it could well be. I mean, they're bringing it could be, because I know that there, one thing I just read, there was 1 million and a bit in foreign students. Now, again, they're not buying houses, but when they come here, they need a place to live.
So corporations are buying buildings and renting them to the school. Because there was an article, I think it was in the Sun, that in Toronto, they were building or taking old buildings and converting them in around universities and stuff and converting them into student housing instead of housing for people who needed it. like the real true immigrants that came in, or the people that just live in Canada that were just becoming of age and were getting to the point where they might be able to purchase like a condo or something like that. And then all of a sudden they're turning it all into student housing, because I know they were letting in a shit ton of students too.
Oh, yeah, it's students and refugees and foreign workers. Again, a lot of people come in from Mexico and other places in the world, and they come here for the season or whatever it may be in what their field is that they're working, and they have to be housed somewhere.
And now they've just cut that back too. Foreign workers.
Yes, they've
not-
cut back on the students and on the foreign workers, but not by a great amount, I don't think.
Even if they're cutting back on foreign workers, though, Canada's in a pinch right now to find people. So
To find people that'll work.
doesn't make any sense to me. So this snowball effect comes along, and 2021 hits, and interest rates drop to almost zero.
Oh, yeah, and that fueled housing purchase. Like,
That I think is probably the kicker. Rebecca?
Canada welcomed 471,000 new permanent residents, immigrants,
What year?
in 2023, and that exceeded what they planned on of 465,000.
So maybe the millions was over the term?
well, this
His
is
term?
that's immigrants that are moving here to set up home in Canada.
Okay.
Then you add to that the foreign students and,
And
the
the
foreign
refugees.
workers and the refugees and that sort of stuff. Then
Okay.
that gets you up well over 1 million.
So has Canada got the same problem as the U.S. does, where people are crossing our border illegally every day?
As far as I know, no. I mean, there are some coming here, and of course, the United States is concerned about people using Canada as a conduit to get to the United States if they can get here.
I did hear that, yes.
Yeah, and that's where a year ago, I think it was, that the Canadian government implemented where people from Mexico had to get a visa to come here. Prior to that, they could just like us, we just go to Mexico and have a holiday and whatnot and come home.
Hey, Mexico.
Mexico.
I think we need to take a break and have a shot of tequila. What do you
All
think?
right, tequila.
Okay, we're going to be right back. We're going to have
Arriba,
ourselves a shot of tequila. Be right back.
Don't dump it. Gracias.
All right, since we left off talking about tequila or Mexico.
Mexico.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Production team.
Cheers.
One day we'll have a camera turned on.
Salud.
Okay, housing crisis.
Whoa, that's cold.
It's powerful too. Wow. That was nummy. All right, so housing crisis.
Yeah, so we're talking about immigration and that sort of stuff coming in the
And then
number.
then the interest rate drops in 2021 to 0 point whatever it
Yeah,
was.
it was like 0.5% or something like that. The Bank of Canada rate.
So everybody rushes out to get a new mortgage, and I can't remember what government official it was. I think it might even be Trudeau said, "Oh yeah, interest rates will never go up again."
Yeah, I think that was that.
Freeland?
No, what's his name? Tiff. He's the Bank of Canada governor.
Oh, okay.
Tiff Macklem or something like that. And so he said, oh, yeah, rates are going to be down a long time. And they came so low. And, of course, wisely, I think, on the part of the bureaucrats we allowed to run our lives, they instituted a minimum rate at which you have to qualify, right? So that gave a bit of a cushion. But the problem with that cushion is the fact that when you go and want to purchase a new vehicle, or you want to purchase a boat or a quad or a snowmobile or whatever, there's no qualifications there. It's just, are you breathing, basically. They look at your credit score. They don't really get into the same debt service ratio. So people would qualify at a higher rate than what they actually had to pay.
Right.
So they had this extra cash, and they go out and buy other toys. So as these mortgages come due, I think there's something like 65% of the mortgages are coming due over the next 2 years, 25 and 26. And then those people that maybe had a mortgage of 2% for 5 years, now they're going to have to renew. Well, if they renew it today, it's you can get a rate at about 4.5%, which is down from what it was. And so if
But that's still over double what they're paying.
over double what they're paying, yeah, exactly.
So, but I'm still trying to get a handle on what how did we get to where we are today? How does a house go from, in 2015, let's say 600,000 to 1.2 million dollars today?
Well, I would imagine, as we talked about the immigration, new people coming to Canada for whatever purpose, to live or to a temporary worker or a student or whatever, they all add pressure to that. Interest rates being low, making people's qualification easier. But on top of that, of course, you have all the governments across the country spending money they don't have. Trudeau has basically doubled the federal debt in his term of what has he been now? 9 years?
9 years,
8
yes.
years or whatever. So when he took over from the Harper government, the federal debt was just under 600 billion. And Harper had paid it down from like close to 800 billion. And over his term of, I think he had 9 years, he managed
600, hang on, 600 billion?
billion,
What are we at today?
over 1.2 trillion.
So he's at it, okay.
He's basically doubled the debt. And so, like this year that we're in right now, that ends in February or whatever it is, March of 2025, the federal government is projecting a $54 billion deficit. And since Trudeau's been in power, he's been racking up like 50 odd billion a year adding to that debt. So they're spending 50 billion a year, more or less, every year than they bring in taxation. So that's all money that's going into whatever, and it's sort of a distribution of wealth, I guess, in some respect. I mean, they have these pet projects. They give money away across the world, which, fair enough, if we can share some of our wealth, but it shouldn't be future wealth. It should be current wealth. Future wealth in the sense that it's going to be someone down the road that has to pay that back, not us today.
Okay. So, and how does this all link with bonds and stuff? Because we had this conversation once before, and I think it will help a lot of people if we can decipher how does bond affect interest, government, the where your dollar stands.
Yeah, well, when a government spends money it doesn't have, they have to borrow it. So they issue bonds, which is like a promise to pay, basically. Or so.
And that's where anybody can buy those bonds?
I think the government bonds are a little bit. You have to. I think the minimum purchase is $100,000.
Okay.
They used to have Canada Savings bonds, right? And they did away with those a number of years ago, but. The average Canadian could buy very small denominations in Canada Savings bonds, and you got an interest rate on that bond. And so they don't have those anymore. They have only these Government of Canada bonds or Province of British Columbia bonds and that sort of stuff. They go to a bond market, which is like a stock market, right? You have shares in the Royal Bank or Tesla or whatever, and people buy and sell those all the time, right? So they bought it at $10 and they're selling it at $50, or they bought it at $10 and they're selling it at $4 or whatever, and as long as there's a buyer. And so with a government, they issue bonds. They say, okay, we need some money, so we're putting out an issue of bonds to raise whatever the number is. This year it'll be roughly $54 billion. So there has to be buyers for those bonds, and so they'll put on that bond, they'll put a face rate that, okay, we want to borrow from you $100,000 or $100 million or whatever it is, and we'll pay you 4%. And so if there's a buyer that says, well, that seems like a good deal, I'll buy that bond, here's my 100,000 or my 100 million or whatever, and that bond has a term on it. It could be anywhere from a few months up to 30 years. And so typically the longer the duration, the higher the yield. And so, of course, you have to have buyers. And if there's no buyers, then, or fewer buyers, then those buyers can say, well, I'll only give you $90,000 for that $100,000 bond. So when the bond matures, I get the $100,000, even though I only paid $90 for it, and I get interest on the $100,000 at that 4%, say.
So they pay $90,000 for $100,000, plus they still get the interest, plus they get the difference between the 90 and the 100.
Correct. And
sounds
then,
like a pretty good
then
deal.
you work that back, and then it increases the yield from 4% to effectively whatever that works out to. It could be 6 or whatever. And so that's when it's first issued. But then the large corporations, other governments, and whatnot that are holding these bonds.
Want to smoke?
Yeah, gracias.
Thank you.
So it's no different than a stock in that sense. So you've bought that bond and you paid whatever you paid for it. Maybe you paid $100,000 for a $100,000 bond. And hang on, where is that? I wish they'd color one end or the other, right? So you may have bought that bond for $100,000 and it was a 10-year term paying you 4% interest. And then you need that money back, or you want that money back, or you don't like the way Canada's going, perhaps. And so then you go to the bond market and you say, okay, I've got this $100,000 bond. It's paying 4% for another 8 years. I've held it for 2 years. I want to sell it. And so some people might say, ooh, that looks like a really good deal. They might give you $110,000 for that $100,000 bond. And that would lower the yields because they only get back 100 and they get interest on 100. And you paid 110. So that might drop the yield to, say, 3%. But conversely, as you keep issuing more and more bonds, when a bond that was issued 20 years ago matures, well, Canada doesn't have the money to pay back that person, so they have to issue a new bond to pay back that old bond. And then they have to issue a new bond to pay for the debt they're incurring today. So you get this growing pool of bonds.
And that's what's supposed to pay the debt?
Yes, that allows them to
basically
operate.
They're borrowing from you and I, who buy the bonds, to pay their debt.
Well, it's not you and I. We pay the interest. Somebody else has lent the Canadian government money to allow them to spend the money they don't have. It's like you living on your credit cards or your credit lines and that sort of stuff. And eventually, the credit card gets maxed out. The credit line gets maxed out. So you go back to the bank and say, can I get another credit card or another credit line or an increase in my credit line? And they might give that to you, and then you spend it again, and you come back and say, geez, could I get another increase? And eventually they're going to say, whoa, you're going to become a credit risk.
And now, is this where our dollar value drops and things get more expensive?
Well, it's part of it because the dollar's not backed by anything other than the promise of the Canadian government to pay or the provincial government to pay. And so...
and by not backed by anything, you're talking like when
Like gold.
It used to be backed by gold back, and then Reagan dropped that in 19...
that was Nixon in 71.
Nixon in 71,
Yeah.
right.
But after World War II, they had the Bretton Woods Conference, and that's where they changed what the gold standard was. Like it used to be, they had a dollar value for gold, and it was a fixed price on gold. And so then that limited your money supply. You had so much gold in your vaults, and if you wanted your dollar to be high, you didn't have a whole lot of dollars in production. And if you didn't care, then you could put more dollars in production, but it would lower the value of your dollar. And so then in the Bretton Woods, they changed it a little bit where you could have a certain percentage of gold, not 100% backing. And then in 71, they dropped it altogether. So there's nothing backing. It's fiat, what they call fiat currency.
Fiat currency.
Yeah.
So they can just keep printing as much money as they want,
Right.
which then brings the value of that dollar down.
Yeah, as you put more and more in circulation, it's like anything. Gold is valuable because it's hard to find and expensive to extract and whatnot. But gravel's not worth as much because it's everywhere.
Right.
It's getting harder
So
to find. But
this is why the price of everything's gone up then.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've printed way too much money, knocks the value of our dollar down. We have to import stuff. I heard a number, I think it was just a couple of months ago in Toronto, in Ontario, construction costs have gone up by 52%. 52%.
52%. Now, part of that is also demand. And again, the government spending money they don't have on various projects. I mean, certainly we need to spend money on infrastructure. We have to have roads that are drivable. And
Well, didn't the Liberals just say they're going to stop doing that? Stop repairing the roads and not giving any more federal dollars for...
well, that was certainly one of the ministers. I don't know if that's a platform of the actual government, but the Liberal government, and certainly I would think other parties have a similar mindset that they don't want you driving cars because of this climate change, right? It's like,
Or is this because of the, what is it, what is that big organization?
Oh, World Economic Forum.
That one. And 15-minute cities.
Yeah.
So is that why they're doing it? Because I did see that in the news that they were the federal government is proposing or maybe it's a proposal to stop funding road repair throughout Canada.
But
maybe that was just Western Canada. Maybe they're just mad at us.
Well, I think that was, I can't remember his name, but the minister of whatever the hell he is, he made a comment about that he didn't think they should continue to fund. But of course, if they're pushing everybody into electric vehicles and trucks and buses and dump trucks and fire trucks and all this sort of stuff, those still need roads to run on. So the roads still need to be in a state of repair that you can run down the road, and a bridge over a river, or that kind of thing, right? So those and sewer lines.
Rebecca, can you Google that? Federal government not paying for road infrastructure anymore? See what you can come up with there. Anyway, we'll continue on.
Yeah. So you need sewer lines and water lines and the power grid and all that sort of stuff. You need that infrastructure for sure, but the billions of dollars that this current government has given to these new battery manufacturing plants, it works out to like $1 million a job they create. And I mean, what is that going to be the payback to Canada? And now the demand for electric vehicles is declining. I just read the other day that there's a plant in Ontario somewhere that was going to be making components for batteries, these electric lithium batteries they use or whatever for.
Oh, hang on. What'd you find?
Environment Minister Stephen
Champagne or something like that? Oh, okay.
said Monday the federal government will stop investing in new road infrastructure. A comment that immediately drew attack from the opposition Conservatives and some premiers who said the climate activist turned politician is out of touch.
Okay, that's
What was the date on that article?
February 2024.
Yeah.
So just this year, yeah.
Yeah. That's that Gabo?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Like, there's a picture of him on the internet. He's in
A jumpsuit.
where it's gone. You lost it there. Yeah, he was in a jumpsuit, a prison jumpsuit or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was protesting something or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but he got arrested for it, and I think he did a bit of time.
No, he actually did time.
Well, I think he was in that prison jumpsuit, so maybe they were just holding him while they, I mean, again, in Canada, there's not very severe penalties for anything, so he probably didn't serve much time, if any. But
And now, and he's a minister.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, it's happening. It happens every. So, question for you: Trump or Trudeau?
Trump or Trudeau?
Yeah.
Well,
Which one? Which one do you like?
oh, well, I would take Trump over Trudeau any day.
Would you?
Oh yeah, I mean Trump's he's a loose cannon for sure, but he doesn't like bureaucracy. He wants to break the back of the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats have gotten far too powerful. These are the unelected officials that basically run the government. They basically direct everything. So
Okay, so Trudeau, Trump, Polyev, whoever it was, Chrétien, they're just figureheads.
well, they certainly.
What control do they have? So, what control does the bureaucrats have, and what control? And we'll come back to Trump in a bit. What bureaucrats? What do they control, and what is the actual? What does like the prime minister do or the president do? How does that organization work?
Well, they set the general direction, obviously. I mean, in Canada, of course, we do not elect the prime minister. We elect a party, right? The party with the most votes forms the government. And if they don't have enough votes, then they form a coalition government like Trudeau has with the NDP. And so he has to agree to certain things, give them a certain amount of voice in government. So they set the general direction, and of course, then it's the bureaucrats that implement it. But the bureaucrats have a lot of influence over the government, because here you have people that are elected that come into a position and given a ministerial role, and they're not sure how everything works and what they should do. They've got maybe a general idea of what they want, but they rely heavily upon the deputy ministers, which are hired individuals. They're civil servants. Which is a term that's
And they never change, no matter what government there is in power?
yeah,
They
I
always stay?
they can be let go, I think, or whatever. But typically, I don't think the deputy ministers are. I mean, and it costs the taxpayer a lot of money to let anybody in government go. Like there's those golden parachutes that they get, and it sets them up
Okay.
infinitely better than their pension already does.
So the same bureaucrats can be there throughout a term of many different political parties.
Right.
Okay. So they have to, and so Trump, we're going back to the States now. We're going to go back and talk about Trump. He hates bureaucrats.
Yeah, he hates that control that unelected officials have.
Okay. So do you think he's the best? What's going to happen if he gets elected? What's going to happen?
Well, I think there'll be another attempt on his life.
We were talking, I think it was 2 days before that. And your prediction, you had two predictions. What were they?
Well, back in the early part of this year, when they started all these court cases, or even maybe late last year, I guess, or whatever, they started these court cases against him, and they were trumped up charges. Trumped,
That's a good one.
Paying hush money to some hooker, whatever. I mean, like who cares? And the fact that he lied on his net worth statement to some bank, the banks were saying,
We're all good.
yeah, we're
he
all
paid.
good.
What's the problem?
We're not losing any money. And, I mean, working in mortgages, it's the same thing. I get an application from somebody and they say they have, $200,000 in household goods. Well, sure. Right?
Okay. Yeah, we'll take your word on it.
If you say you got $100,000 in the bank, well, let me see a statement to show you got $100,000 in the bank. So you're looking at other things. You're not necessarily looking at their net worth. It plays a lesser role than other things do, for sure. And you're dealing with people that at that level, they know what they're doing, and they may well say, Trump says his Trump Tower or whatever is worth $100 million or whatever. And they might think, yeah, right, sure, whatever. It's worth $50 million. But what you're wanting to do, I like, and I'll lend you the money. So they go and charge him, and they fine him, 400 some odd million dollars or whatever, like for what? So that wasn't playing out for him. And of course, his support across the United States was growing and that sort of stuff. So the next step had to be an assassination.
What was it was 2 days before that happened. I wasn't quite sure how you got down there and back that fast, but there was two predictions you made, and somebody was going to assassinate Trump, and there was one other one. Do you remember what that was?
God, I got so much bullshit going through my mind. No, no, I can't help you on that one.
All right. So Trump, I mean, quite frankly, yes, Biden has backed out.
Yeah.
He's given it to what's her name, Camilla?
Oh, no.
Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala?
Kamala. That's it, Kamala.
Kamala.
So, okay, well, you guys can Google it and figure it out.
Well, you have to figure out how you pronounce it.
Yeah, exactly. So he's Biden's backed out. Put her in. She's taking over. Now, does she automatically go? She automatically is in the running?
Biden endorsed her, and now the Obamas have endorsed her. And at this point, there's been nobody that has put their name forth to challenge her for the leader of the Democratic Party. So they have some sort of a convention coming up in August, and that would be the time where she would be appointed leader of the Democratic Party, unless somebody challenges her. But nobody's come forth at this point to.
I wonder if Kennedy will do that.
Well, he said he would, but he's had some locking of some horns with the Democratic Party and that kind of stuff, and that's why he went independent, right?
Right. Okay. So now that Trump had that assassination attempt on him, I think it's a no-brainer. He's going to win.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, he's got a lot of support there for sure. There's a lot of with the growth in government comes a growth in votes that for a party that supports government growth, right? If you get you're not going to necessarily get a lot of government workers that are going to vote for Trump because he wants to reduce the size of government.
Okay, right.
So the chances are that he should win. I mean, based on the polls and that kind of stuff or whatever. But it would seem that it's most likely we're going to see Trump in again, I would think.
That good for us?
Probably not necessarily. Trump is a big supporter of tariffs and that sort of stuff. Like over the many years, the past number of years, a lot of jobs, manufacturing type jobs and that sort of stuff has been offshored because of cheaper wages. And so, instead of making steel pipe in Canada or the U.S., if it's made in China, where they're paying somebody 20 cents a day, let alone an hour, then that pipe can come here a lot cheaper. So Trump wants to put tariffs on that stuff so that it's just as expensive as if you bought something made in America. And then that would bring back jobs in the States. So that becomes inflationary, right? Because now all of a sudden you don't have the benefit of those cheaper wages. But, China's been getting more expensive. They've been becoming more wealthy over time, and so their wages have moved up. So then eventually we're going to run out of cheap wages around the world at some point.
As
Rebecca?
of January 2020, the Trump administration had imposed tariffs on 16.8% of all goods imported into the U.S.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah, and our largest trading partner is still the U.S., as far as I know, and so a lot of goods are manufactured here and then shipped across the line. So if Trump gets into power, we have our softwood that gets shipped down to the States.
But they're all our softwood lumber mills are owned by U.S. companies.
Yeah, more and more are for sure. I don't know how many are left that are Canadian owned, really, but there's still some.
Okay.
But yeah, so that may not necessarily be good for us. I mean, other than there is that NAFTA or whatever it is now with the new one that Trump did when he was elected back in 2016 or whatever it was, and then there was the North American Free Trade Agreement that was done however many years back before that, and then Trump rewrote it, and that involved Canada, U.S., and Mexico. So there's that has some guiding factors over what they can and can't do, but he's likely to want to try and reopen that and renegotiate. So it could be difficult for us for sure.
Okay. So it's more than likely that Trudeau is not going to make it in again in next year in
We can
2025.
only hope.
Right. And I know that Trump and Trudeau did not have any sort of relationship.
No.
Trudeau would walk up to him and Trump would just turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
Kind of a joke, which Trudeau is kind of a joke to us.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, we haven't kept up with our military spending. Were we not part of the G8, now we're part of G7? Well, how did that work? There was something in there.
Well, I think we're still part of the G7, and there's of course the G20 and all those different levels of.
Which are higher levels.
Yeah, but there was one that was Canada was left out with some security thing where the U.S. and Australia and Britain.
Right. What was the name of that?
Well, it's not the Five Eyes, because the Five Eyes Canada is part of, and that's some kind of a security thing. But they started some new thing, and that involves Australia, and I don't know if it involves New Zealand, but certainly U.S. and Britain. And Canada was not invited to partake.
What does that say about us?
Yeah, exactly. We're not pulling our weight.
Defense?
What's that?
Trilateral defense?
Is that it?
Does it say who the countries involved in that are?
Trilateral defense.
So you now have to open it.
But yeah, so we're certainly,
Do you want another tequila?
well, si, senor.
All right.
Canada was, I don't know if anyone can hear this. Do you want to read it?
No, go ahead.
Canada was left out of the Trilateral Defense and Security Pact known as AUKUS. And the new report by a respected American think tank says Ottawa must overcome its apparent indifference to the deal or risk being left behind by its allies.
Yeah, and I imagine that's largely driven by the fact that we're not carrying our weight in the NATO agreement, where we haven't been spending 2% of our GDP on military to contribute towards defending the Western world. We've been relying upon our big neighbor, the U.S., to look after our defense, which even if we don't spend, I'm sure they're not going to want somebody invading us, but it's just not right that we shouldn't be contributing. So
I know they're trying to They've been asking some pretty heavy questions, like why isn't Canada keeping up? And I think it's supposed to be, what, 2% of the GDP?
2% of the GDP. Yeah, I think you said we were like 1.2% is what we're actually spending.
I think it was less than that.
Might even be, yeah. And I think Trudeau's talking like by 2035 we'll get to 2%. And that. But again, he's got to change his spending habits to do that because you can't. I don't know what that extra 1% or whatever of GDP would represent in dollar value. But I mean, I don't know what our GDP is offhand, but when we are already borrowing money to spend on things we can't afford, how are you going to increase spending even farther?
Well, that would be the magic question, wouldn't it?
Right. Gracias.
But
So yeah,
I
it's,
think Canada's kind of a joke on the national stage, though, right now when it comes to defense spending and stuff. Anyway, here,
All
let's,
right.
let's have these.
salud.
Another shot.
Another shot.
Cheers, production.
Salud.
All right, Krista Freeland.
Yeah, Krista. Oh boy.
All right, I have a thing called essential tremors. So if you see me doing this, I have a reason.
Right.
What is with her?
Oh, yeah. That's a difficult question to answer.
We used to own nightclubs, and somebody walked in with those facial twitches, head noddings, like this. We used to think that there was a challenge there. We'll just leave it at that. How did she ever
A
become
substance.
Who knows, right? Like
Right.
it's pretty scary. And she can never answer a question. I mean, Trudeau's no better at it either. They
Yeah.
never have I ever once heard them answer a direct question.
In fairness, most politicians are like that.
Here's where I'm going to disagree with you. Polyev answers questions, and he pushes back.
Yeah, yes, I agree. But they have asked him questions, and it's just drawing blanks right now for me. But they did ask him a question about the how he was going to do something, and he never answered the question.
Well, I watched him today, and we'll come back to Krista here in a minute because we got some more to say about that. I watched Polyev today it was a TikTok video on social media, and one of the reporters was asking him what his plans were with the safe supply
Oh, safe
that
supply. Okay.
that the government's trying to push to give drug addicts, quote unquote, a safe supply. It's not a safe supply. Yeah, it's not made in somebody's bathtub, but it's still an opioid. These people are still. He went through the numbers. Canada's crime rate has shot through the roof because of their catch and release. Anyway,
Yeah.
he did. He actually came out straight out and said, no, we will not be backing the safe supply program. We're going to put the money into recovery.
I did hear that, yes. So they
Yeah.
would put the money into helping these addicts try and beat their addiction.
Toronto, 250 tent cities.
250.
Yeah. Have you been, when was the last time you walked down East Hastings in Vancouver?
Oh, it's been a while, but you just have to walk downtown Vernon.
Well, thankfully I haven't had to do that for a while. But yeah, I've seen the encampments there too. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is all catch and release, drug addicts. Now, we have to take a step back, and I don't want to be ignorant towards drug addicts because there's some out there that really had no choice because they were bamboozled into taking this, what was that stuff called?
Oh, yeah.
No,
No.
methadone. It was
Oxycontin.
Oxycontin.
Yes.
Right? Non-addictive.
Yes.
And all of a sudden now, and you can't get Oxycontin anymore because they've pulled that off the shelf or they reformulated or whatever they did with it. Doctors aren't prescribing it, so now all these people that got hooked on it are out and they had to go find it someplace else.
Exactly.
So along comes the Liberal government. Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, we screwed up. We allowed this drug into Canada, so now we're going to give you a safe supply. And we're going to try and build you a cubicle somewhere, some point. So, yeah. Polyev at least has, I think, has a plan on it. I hope to hear more of it. So anyway, Krista Freeland After that by-election in Toronto and Liberals lost,
Yes, they'd held it for 30 years.
Trudeau should have stepped down.
One would think so, for sure. He's lost the support of even some of his cabinet, I think, and certainly the backbenchers and that kind of thing.
Who takes his place if he steps down?
Oh, I don't even want to go there. I would assume it would be the deputy prime minister.
And her name is Krista Freeland.
Yes.
This is the
Krista
lady.
Fried.
Krista Fried. I wonder if that could stick. Krista Fried. Krista Fried. So, this is the lady that when interest rates started going up, told people to cancel their Disney subscriptions.
Right? Yes.
This is the lady that you ask her a question. Like she was asked point blank, are they going to get rid of you? And she says, well, I mean, that's up to the prime minister. You'd have to talk to him and get his view. I am dumbfounded by the lack, what would you call it, charisma, a lack of intelligence when it comes to talking.
Yeah,
How
it's-
did she ever get to be deputy prime minister?
Well, deputy prime minister and the finance minister on top of that.
So she should be fired.
Oh, guaranteed. Guaranteed. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
You like her, don't you?
oh,
I can see the twinkle in your eye.
Krista Fried. Yeah.
Krista Fried.
Oh, God.
It is painful. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing
Yeah.
when she speaks. I thought Trudeau was embarrassing. When he first started, remember back in 2015 when he was elected, he couldn't get two words out with going, It was embarrassing for a leader. He's gotten better over that. Then all of a sudden, Krista Freeland starts getting in front of that camera a lot. And she's like,
Right. Yeah. No answers.
nothing.
No verbiage.
She just repeats the same thing and goes back, let me tell you what good stuff we are doing for the country.
Right.
I don't care about your question. But here's what we are doing. We're going to build more houses. You can't, it is impossible for, what did they say? They wanted to build 500,000 homes, or was it 1 million homes? How many homes does the Liberal government want to build in a short period of time?
It's a lot. That's
It's
for
been
damn sure.
mathematically proven impossible. But we have the masses sitting out there thinking, oh, the Liberal government's going to get us our housing.
Going to get us your housing. Yeah.
It's impossible. It can't. And they're sitting there waiting, okay, housing prices are going to come down. Liberal government, we're going to drive housing prices down. That's impossible to do. They can't do it.
Well, they could if they start taxing your equity. Like right now, like again in Canada, you
Start? Aren't they already doing that? Isn't that already been passed?
no, not yet. They've been talking about it, and then Trudeau keeps denying it. But you know, as you know, if you own your principal residence and you bought it for $100,000 and you sell it for $1 million, that gain is tax free, and he wants to start taxing that.
Right. But how's that going to drive the house prices down? What'd you find out there, Rebecca?
There's a lot before it, but it says we're talking about building almost 3.9 million homes by 2031.
Oof.
Quoted by
Impossible.
Trudeau.
Yeah, we don't have the trades for that.
Number one, we don't have the trades for it. Number one, there isn't enough days in a year to build that many houses. And it's been mathematically proven that it can't happen.
Yes.
But people are believing him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can say what you want, right?
Are we going to argue about something tonight?
Oh, I'm not going to say I support Trudeau. I'm sorry. You take that route.
Oh, no, he's not my friend. He's your friend.
Okay, it's Krista Fried for you.
No, absolutely not. Oh, my God.
One more blurb here. The Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report Thursday that estimates Canada would need to build 3.1 million homes by 2030 to close the housing gap.
3.1 million homes. It's impossible.
By
It can't do it.
2030, that's like 6 years.
6 years.
Jesus, that's only 6 years.
Wow.
How many houses were built in, what was a good year? 2023?
Well, say, yeah, 2022 or 2023. Yeah, probably, yeah.
Can see if there's a stat for that. How many houses were built in that time period?
Across the nation.
Across the nation, yes. All right. So, yeah, Christopher Freeland, we're not going to talk about that because that's
Yeah,
just
that's
an
a tough one.
embarrassment.
That's a tough one.
Total embarrassment. What else do we want to talk about? What else is new? What's frosting your ass these days?
Oh, same old government.
Government.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I've always said since I don't know how old I was, anything big is bad. Big government, big business, it's all bad. And so, have we?
Do you have an answer there?
In 2023, Canada's 6 largest CMAs recorded a total of 137,915 housing starts.
139,000.
This represents a marginal 0.05% decrease compared to 2022 and was in line with the annual average of around 140,000 units over the past 3 years.
Wow.
140,000 units, and they want to build 3.1 million in 6 years.
In 6 years. So that's 500,000 homes a year
It can't be done.
when they've been building 130 or 40.
We don't have they don't have the trades to do it. Nobody's going through trade school. It's starting to pick up now. People are starting to go back into trades, but they would have to hammer back through so many trades and your quality would be shit.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. So it's impossible. So all you liberals out there, you go right ahead and vote for Trudeau because you're going to get your house.
You'll get your house. And it'll be cheap.
Oh yeah, dirt cheap.
Even though it'll drive inflation up. You can imagine if you're trying to build that many homes and the products that have to be made. Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. And they're trying to incentivize. Well, okay. Number one, we just touched on that. They're going to start taxing your capital gains.
Well, they haven't announced it yet. Trudeau denies it. He's had all kinds of studies done by different universities about taxing equity and that sort of stuff in your principal residence, but he denies that they're heading that direction. So why are you studying it?
Well, I've heard them come right out and say that you will get taxed at a capital gain of what is it? What's the number of capital gains right now? 25%.
No. Well, if you make a capital gain, which is
So you buy a house for 100,000, you sell it for 200,000. You got a capital gain of 100,000.
100,000, and so prior to June 18th or whatever the hell it was, or June 25th or something like that, you would add half of that gain to your income that you made in that year from other sources, and then that puts you into whatever tax bracket.
So they would tax you 50% of that 100,000.
Right. So 50,000 of that 100,000 gain would be added to your other income, and then
And then you would pay tax on that.
on that income,
So if you're at a 25, well, I guess you'd be at a 50% tax bracket anyway if you're making that kind of money.
probably, yeah.
So they're
But now, as of
Stick it up
as
your
of-
ass, Trudeau.
like in that scenario, if it was 100,000 gain, you'd still pay or 50% of the gain would be added to your income. If you made a gain of 250 or more, then 2/3 of that gets added to your income. And so this is this new capital gains tax that the Liberals, that Krista Fried came out with here and earlier this year. That
so this isn't in place yet?
it's in place as of, I think, June 25th.
Right. Okay.
And so any individual who makes a gain of 250,000 or more will add 2/3 of that to their income, their other taxable income, and then that will put you into whatever tax bracket, and then you'll pay taxes on that higher income. If you have a corporation, this is where professional, like doctors and lawyers and accountants, again, they don't have a pension plan like the government employees do. They have to budget and set money aside. Now, typically their earnings are higher, so they're in a position that they have more disposable income, so they can contribute more to their retirement days to put money aside for later in life. And so a lot of them do it through a professional corporation, and a professional corporation pays, if your taxable income in the corporation is under 750,000, you pay, I think it's 13%.
Right.
Okay, so you are doing the work and the money gets paid to your corporation, and then you take money out of that corporation to live. So what you draw out becomes an expense to the company, and so then whatever the company has for income left over, the company pays 13%. And then, of course, what you draw out, you pay personally on that income at whatever tax rate that puts you at. So a lot of these professional, could be like realtors have professional corporations and that sort of stuff. And so then they will invest that money into other things. It could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be real estate or whatever. And so now all of a sudden in that corporation, if you sell something and you make $1 of a gain, you pay two-thirds. Two-thirds of that gets added to the corporation's income. Whereas before it was only 50%. So now all of a sudden it's a detriment to have that professional corporation, because that's where you were storing your assets to provide for you when you stop working, as opposed to a government worker who gets 80% of their last 5-year average salary.
Okay, so see if I'm getting this straight. If I sell my house, I have to pay capital gains on it.
No.
I do not at this
If
point.
it's
I
your
don't.
principal residence, no. If you had a rental property, yes.
Oh, so on my principal residence as of now, I do not have to pay a capital
Correct.
gains. But if I have a secondary property that I've been saving, we've been paying down, renting out to get as part of our retirement plan.
Sure, you could have a cottage. You could have a secondary residence somewhere if you were fortunate enough to have enough money and you had a condo in Vancouver or whatever, and once in a while you'd go down there and then you sell that place. And if you made a gain on that, now if it's in your personal name and the gain is under $250,000, then still 50% of that gain gets added to your income in that year. But if you made a gain, if you bought it 30 years ago and you paid, $50,000 for it, now it's worth $500,000. Now you've got a $450,000 gain. So 2/3 of that gets added to your income in that year.
Shit.
And then you pay tax on that, plus whatever else you earned in that year.
And that is in place now.
That is in place now. But at this point, if it's your principal residence,
You're still
that's
safe.
still tax-free.
Tax free. Okay. So in a situation where we have a housing crisis and they're looking for housing for people, why the hell would I buy a house to rent out then?
Well, that and compound it to the residential tenancy rules in British Columbia.
Which are absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, and they just got way worse.
How'd they get worse?
Well, if you had a home and it had a suite in the home, or you had a home that was separate from this and you were renting that home, you were trying to save for your days when you don't want to work, when you can finally afford to maybe retire. And so,
It's now 4 months' notice to get them out.
yeah,
4 months notice.
I was just getting to that. So
Okay, sorry.
So this is where it's getting into this situation where all of a sudden, there's people looking for rent's super expensive. Well, why is it super expensive? Because more and more people are getting out of the rental business, unless it's a big corporation or whatever. But so if you have your home and it has a suite in it and you decide to sell your home and you've rented to somebody and the person that's buying your home says, yeah, I want to buy your house, Carmen, but I want vacant possession. I don't want the tenant. I'm just going to, have it for my kids when they come and visit. Now, it used to be that you used to have to give 2 months' notice to that tenant. So I would say, if you accepted my offer, right, and I want vacant possession, then in the offer I would say you have to give them notice. And you used to be required to give them 2 months' notice, 60 days to give them time to find a place, give them 1 month's free rent. And then I think it was if I bought the house and then within 6 months, if I rented the suite out again, then I had to pay 6 months rent to that previous tenant of yours.
They get a windfall of 6 months rent.
Right. So now, as Renee had said, if you have that same house that has a suite in it and you decide to sell it and I buy it and I say I want vacant possession, give these people notice, you now have to give them 4 months notice, 2 months free rent. And if I end up renting that place out within the first 12 months, I have to give them 12 months rent.
How is this going to solve any housing crisis? Nobody's going to want to rent anything out.
Exactly. It's like, fuck that. I'm not going to rent out my house. And if you have another rental place that it's like, oh shit, it's different if I'm buying it as a rental and it's like, sure, I'll take over your tenant. But of course, what happens now, you can't just give rent increases because, your property taxes go up 8 to 10% a year. Why is that? Well, because you got more and more goddamn government workers that are drawing down bigger wages and benefits and pension plans, and those all have to be paid for. They're paid for through property taxes, through the province. If you're in the regional district, the province collects those taxes. If you're in the city collects those taxes. So your property taxes keep going up at 8 to 10% a year. There's no competition to a government. There's not City of Vernon 1 and City of Vernon 2, and if you don't like City of Vernon 1, you can switch to City of Vernon 2. No, you got them. They hold you by the short and curlies. Your insurance keeps going up more and more because there's limited competition. There's like a half a dozen insurance companies around the world. So they have an oligopoly. There's no competition, really. They just do what they want to do. They can pay themselves bonuses, increase wages, benefits, all that sort of stuff. So all those things keep going up. The cost of the goods, you need to replace the sink tap or put on a new doorknob or whatever. That used to cost you $10, now it costs you $30. That doesn't matter. You are legislated that you can only increase. Well, in fact, now I think if you want to increase, you have to apply to the provincial government to say, I want to increase the rent, and this is why.
There's no standard 2% or 3%.
As far as I understand, it used to be that they would set the every year by inflation. So inflation went up, then you could increase the rent at a higher amount. If inflation was low, well, like when we had low inflation, when interest rates were super low and that sort of stuff, then your rent increases were like 1 or 2%. And other years when inflation was higher, you could get 3 or 4%. But your expenses were going up more and more all the time. So the only thing you could bank on is that hopefully the property value would go up over time so that you could subsidize it and then have a gain down the road. But now they're taxing that gain down the road at a higher rate, and they're restricting you to. So it used to be a lot of mom and pops had a few rental houses and provide housing. Well, now mom and pop can't do it. Now you're getting back into this anything big is bad. So now you have big government, bigger government that's making the rules, and you have the only ones that can succeed in that environment are bigger entities, right? You have economies of scale as you grow, but they have that control, and they can. Why would they build more rentals to lower rents?
Who, the government?
No,
Or
no, big corporations that are buying. Why would you increase the supply to lower rents? It'd be kind of foolish.
Well, correct, because especially with the cost of building today.
Don't agree with me.
Oh, sorry, right. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And I can tell you right now, with the horror stories that you hear coming out of Eastern Canada, where land or property owners are having to pay people to get out of their houses.
Oh yeah,
What is it?
key money.
Yeah.
Hostages. They're holding them hostage. I seen it on, I think it was CTV or one of those CBS or CBC or whatever. This little lady had a house, and the guy refused to leave unless, and I think it was a ridiculous amount of money, like
Cash for keys.
cash for keys, like it was
Yeah.
$50,000. And then you hear stories of people going, well, yeah, buy me a property, I'll get out of your house.
Yeah,
Because they quit paying rent.
Sure.
And it takes, 2 years to get in front of the rental board?
yeah. It's a crapshoot because again, if they stop paying rent, you can give them notice, and now the notice period has gone up as well. Like I can't remember. It used to be 10 days if you didn't pay rent on the 1st. If it was due on the 1st, then I could give you notice and say, okay, you have to be out in 10 days. But that was a hollow threat because if you haven't moved out, now I have to go to the residential tenancy branch on the 11th day and say, I gave him notice to move out on the 10th day. He didn't pay rent. He still hasn't paid rent. So now I want him out. Okay, well, we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, well,
Oh, fuck, I got an example for you. It's not the same in a sense, but we have, of course, more government regulation.
hang on a second.
Yeah, you bet.
Cash for keys is a legal agreement between landlord and tenants in BC to vacate a property in exchange for compensation. So it's not just a on the side thing, it's a legal agreement.
Okay, yes, maybe a legal agreement, but when the renter quits paying rent because he's getting kicked out, and the landlord can't evict him until he goes through this process of going through the Rental Tenancy Act, it can take up to 2 years to get through. So here you got a guy sitting on your property, not paying you any money for 2 years,
Yep.
which means now you own a second property that you live in, which is your principal house. You got a mortgage there. You got a mortgage on that one. What do you do?
Yeah, well, you just don't do it. And that's
You
what's
stop
happening.
renting.
We have
Exactly.
less and fewer and fewer rental properties.
Yeah.
Because tenants are smart enough that, and there's lots of good tenants out there for sure, right?
Oh, absolutely, there's yes.
Yeah, but there's lots of people that milk the system. They get in there, they pay a few months, and then they stop paying because they know they're going to be there for however long it takes to go through the process, and they got free rent for that duration. And you might just offer them some cash to leave.
And that's exactly what they say: cash for keys.
Right.
And then it becomes a legal thing, which is
Yep.
absolutely ridiculous.
Sure it is. And the most recent thing now, they're talking about making cooling a human right.
Oh, who?
A human right.
Cooling.
Cooling.
What is cooling?
Like so that your house, your place of residence, your domicile, the temperature cannot exceed 26 degrees. So if you're a tenant, the landlord has to pay for that. He has to put in some sort of cooling system so that your house doesn't go above 26 degrees. If it's your house and you're living in it, who the fuck pays for that? Well, you,
Correct.
right? So, but here a tenant is living there.
Here's something I'm going to tell you right now. I tend to agree with that one.
Oh, no way. Like, you know
If
what?
you're going to be a landlord and rent a house out, it should have air conditioning, especially if, let's say you're living in the Okanagan or you're living in Toronto where we get the high humidity, high temperatures.
Well, now
were
we have
40
something we disagree with.
Absolutely. We had 40 degrees here in the Okanagan for the last almost month. Well, it was close, between 35 and 40 degrees. If you're a landlord and you have a tenant that's paying you rent, they should have air conditioning.
Sure. So you spend $3,000 to put in air conditioning for them?
Well, if
Or
the
whatever it
if the
costs.
tenant's worth keeping, if you want to make money.
Yeah, but
yes.
then you can't increase your rents.
No,
How do you recap that? Well, this is the thing. It's this compounding cost. You got
because
increasing
people can't
property taxes.
can't afford the fancy house that has air conditioning. Why should they be stuck in a piece of shit house that has no air conditioning? Come on,
You
that's a
didn't
health
hold a
issue.
gun to their head to rent it, did you?
Maybe it was the only place they could get.
Sure, but it's still their choice.
Well, absolutely, but if that's the only choice they got, it should. I tend to agree with them. I think every house, if it's in the Okanagan, should have air
So
conditioning.
you're voting for Trudeau.
No, absolutely not. I'm just saying that if I was a landlord, I would definitely have air conditioning in that rental house in an area such as the Okanagan.
Then you should get some rentals.
No, because there's the other problems with it. When they don't want to pay the rent, or you rent it to them, and this is our experience. You go, okay, our son's going to move into the house, and that's fine, that's legal, and which he did. And then you get in there, and you've collected like I don't know what it was, $1,000 damage
Yeah,
deposit.
50%
Yeah, whatever it was.
of the rent.
And you get in there and they, okay, so any damages in the house? No. And you take a walk through and, yeah, this is damaged, that's damaged. Okay, your cat has now pissed in this closet for however many months that you've been here, years. Now we got to replace all the carpet in the house
And the flooring.
and the flooring.
And the flooring.
And can you go after the renter for the rest of that? No.
Well, you can.
But you're not going to get anywhere with it.
No, you're just going to go through a lot of expense and heartache, and then you might have a piece of paper that says they owe you the money, and then good
Try
luck
and collect it.
collecting.
Yeah, exactly. So why be a landlord? So anyway, but as a landlord, I did make sure that there was air conditioning in my house. To that point, do you not believe that a person that rents a house, no matter what their financial situation is, should feel safe? They should be able to not worry about dying because of 40-degree weather outside?
When does somebody
gotta
take
be-
responsibility for themselves?
Okay, that's a whole different subject.
Oh, so it's the same subject. I mean,
Okay, so what happens? Somebody who's mentally handicapped, mentally challenged, is okay. That's probably not a good example because the government's going to pay for whatever they want.
right. People that are unable to afford, the government will step forward. Right? They're already doing that right now, as Renee just said when we were off air there. That
What about a mom and two kids whose dad just bolts and leaves them high and dry? All she's got is what she's got. She's got 2 little kids or 3 little kids she's got to support, and she needs to find a house because they sold the house that they were living in because it's part of the divorce. Now she'll get the majority of that money anyway, but regardless, maybe they didn't have a house to sell. Maybe the landlord said, okay, fine, it was rented for a couple, now you're out. And you gotta
life
go
isn't
find another
always
place.
easy.
No, but I mean, it's got to come to a responsibility of somebody. I want to rent a house and make money off of it. Whether I make money monthly or it's the value of the house increases over time, the property.
And there's no guarantees of that.
No, there's no guarantees. But as a human being, I think that, I mean, if I've spent $300,000 on a house to rent out, I'm pretty sure I can afford $10,000 for air conditioning, or at least a couple of floor models to try and keep the house.
Perhaps, but perhaps not. And this is what you're doing. You're wanting to increase the housing supply, and yet you're making it more and more difficult for multiple players to enter that field, because all of a sudden the cost of entry is going up and up and up. So all of a sudden it's like, well, I could have afforded that house, but now I have to do this and this and this, and property taxes keep going up, and you restrict me on my rent, and I might get a bad tenant that just says, kick me out. I'm not paying rent anymore. So you add
You have
all
a
these
point.
things.
You have a
so
point there.
You're chasing away your supply. So how do you? So what you're headed for is government housing.
So okay, you're not dead set against having air conditioning for somebody. You're dead set against because the government's forcing it upon you.
Yeah, against legislation that way. Yes, I mean,
Okay.
if you sure, yeah, I mean, if you're affluent enough and you've got that rental property, or even if you're not, and you're thinking, okay, this is a really good tenant, I don't want to lose them. I mean, they look after the
Right.
place, and it's getting, the days every year it seems to be getting warmer and warmer, and you choose to do that, great. But they can also take some responsibility, and if you're not prepared or not able to, then they could also maybe try and budget a little different and go buy a floor model. You can make payments on those things, and everybody seems to always be able to buy their smokes and their beer and their everything else. I mean, and sacrifice their food and their environment in which they live.
But there are families out there that are living on
Oh, I
next to nothing.
agreed, and that should be
They
your
can barely,
choice.
but can barely feed themselves and their children. So I mean,
Yes,
I look
but
at it this way: if okay, so we have to separate the good from the bad. So let's take the bad tenants out of this for a minute. Let's just get rid of them for a second. And
That'll never happen.
we're hoping that-
Hypothetically.
hypothetically, there you go. You and I go buy some rental property. You're a good guy. I'm a good guy.
Well, I know I am, but
We have a young family in there who, not their fault or anything, have ended up in a position in life where they can't make a lot of money. They don't have the education. And yes, everybody has the ability to further themselves in life. Absolutely, 100% believe that. I have an issue when it comes to somebody thumping the table and go, "Oh my God, you're rich. You've got a golden spoon in your mouth. Somebody gave this to you." No, we worked our asses off for it.
right.
You can too. But because you're in this position at this time, we have this rental property and we rent it to them and they're a good tenant. The house didn't have air conditioning in it when we bought it. Good tenant. Yeah, we'll buy it. Or we've already bought the house and it's got air conditioning in it and we have a great tenant and that tenant appreciates that. Maybe that helps them get a little further ahead.
Absolutely, and that should be your choice. And of course, if you're in a position that you can choose to do it, and you choose to do it, wonderful.
I can't imagine anybody getting into the rental market to rent a house out that can't afford a $600 or $400 window unit to put in the house.
But this is the thing: in the old days, when you had the moms and pops having second homes and providing rental accommodation, now all of a sudden they're underwater. Their rents aren't enough to keep up with the other expenses like property taxes and insurance and so on and so forth that keep going up.
Again-
and they're restricted on and they're now under the water. And then maybe they don't have the money to buy a $600 floor model.
Again, you're going.
So if
You're angry at the legislation.
Yes.
It's not something that you would do personally to somebody. You're angry that the government is going to mandate landlords to do it.
Well, I'll tell you what's coming is they will amend the building codes across the country that any new homes must have air conditioning in them. And then that will drive up the cost of housing and
Correct,
drive up
yes.
the cost of rents.
Yep.
And you're still in the same quagmire you are today, only worse.
True. Yeah. Okay.
Like
I
you-
can't argue that one.
There's a segment of society that, like, there was a person that we knew that we had mentioned to, that you guys had 4 businesses or whatever, right? When you had the water business and that kind of stuff, and it must be nice to be rich.
Because they were bitching about the water not showing up.
Yeah, on time or something like that. And it's like, what is your perception? You think that they just sit back on recliner all day long while
We
there's
are
money
sitting
rolls
on our
in.
deck drinking margaritas. We've decorated the place like Mexico. We don't do anything. We don't work because
No.
we're rich.
Yes.
We own 4 businesses.
Yes, and if you have businesses, you must be wealthy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Right. Never mind the fact that we haven't had a fucking holiday in 4 years because we can't get staff that actually want to work, or that when we do get staff, they screw things up immensely. And I mean, it's not that we're cheap either. We pay good wages.
Yes, yes.
Okay. You just got me angry.
Yeah, no, I know.
Now
That's
let's
the
give those people air conditioning in addition to everything else. that
force
they
you
need
to give
Fuck them.
instead of them having to
Fuck
take
'em.
responsibility for themselves and doing what they can. And if they can't, there are government services that will step in because they are giving away air conditioners to people right now. But of course, the government is spending money they don't have, so they need to push that off into somebody else. So they push it onto the property owner instead of the tenant.
Yes, I understand that. And again, you're mad at the legislation, not at the fact that you would provide air conditioning for somebody.
For sure, if I
That
could afford
deserved
it, if I had a rental property and I could afford to do that, and the tenant was a good tenant, then you want to keep that tenant and keep them happy. Like we had a rental property, and we had tenants in there, and I kept their rents low. I didn't even increase their rents to at all for years because they were good tenants. So and then all of a sudden, but your property taxes keep going up, your insurance keeps going up. All these things that people have power over you because there's no competition. And then the cost of inflation goes up and it's finally, okay, I need to increase the rents. And it goes up $2 a month and they're bitching about that.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Yeah. No, I
So
mean,
how are you
there-
gonna
there-
spend another
There is that
600?
segment of the population that has zero clue.
Yeah.
Zero. They think it's owed to them. What is that called? Entitlement.
Entitlement.
They're entitled to it. Well, no, you're not entitled to shit.
Yeah, well, we are living
You're
in a
entitled.
society. that
You're
isn't-
entitled to get up in the morning, go to work, pay your bills, make your way in life.
Yeah. Provide for yourself. You're entitled to do that.
Because you and I, or whoever it is, has the extra money to want to, because what? We don't get government pensions because we are self-employed.
And why do you have the money you have? I'm not saying you got tons of money, but you have some cash. You have a good lifestyle. And why do you have that?
Because we got out of bed and worked.
Exactly. And you haven't taken
I
a
have a-
vacation. And
So let's go back to this. I had a grade 9 education, grade 9. And I have 4 businesses. Actually, I had quite a few. Went broke once, went bankrupt once, had no choice. But I got up and I did it again. These people that sit on their Facebook all goddamn day and complain about everything else in the world. Yeah, all right. You know what? Suck it up, princess.
yeah.
If
You
you're
have,
if you're able-bodied, not don't have any morbid diseases or anything that are stopping you, because I do feel sorry for those people.
Of course,
not
yes.
sorry, but I understand that they're in a difficult situation. But for the average guy that's got 2 able legs, strong back, girl or boy, and is sitting there complaining that landlords are charging way too much money, well, you know what? You have no idea.
you have something and you should share it with me.
And I'm going to make the government make you share it with me.
Right. And so what that does is take away incentive to do anything. Because where we're headed is the government is going to take more and more away from those who have. It doesn't matter how they have what they have, how they got there. They didn't get there because somebody kept throwing money at their way. Some people maybe there's some wealthy families out there and they just keep throwing money at their children and their grandchildren or whatever. But for the most part, most people have what they have because they've worked their ass off
Right.
and they've sacrificed in other ways to accumulate something so that they can at some point in time in their life maybe step back a little bit and enjoy some time before they expire.
While giving people a decent living
Right.
as business owners. I pay my staff extremely well. I pay them above what market value is. Always have, always will. So why do we get penalized because we can buy a piece of property and we put you in that because you, for whatever your circumstances are, couldn't get into the purchase or housing market. And now, yeah, they do a lot of complaining. They don't want
Sure.
this,
They want you to
that.
share.
Yeah.
They want you to share what you've accumulated, whatever that is, because you have it. Doesn't matter how you got it, what it took to get it, but you have it, so you should
Well, what
share
gives
that.
them the right to think that we owe them anything?
Well, Because you say they should have air conditioning. You're giving in to that.
No, that's just me being nice. I would definitely do that. Look what happened when Tim Hortons, when their staff went on strike. Everybody was going, living wage, living wage, living wage, living wage. $20 an hour is a living wage, living wage, living wage. How's that living wage working out for them now?
Yeah, not good.
No, because everything's gone up.
Sure.
And that is just the world of reality. Is you want more money, we'll pay you more money, but our product also goes up.
Yes, but you also have to work harder and more efficient. You have to put in more than you take out.
Oh my, okay.
Right? You have to put in more than you take out.
Here's something that really pisses me off. Remember growing up, we wanted a job, we wanted to get ahead, we wanted to make some money, right? We went out and found a job. What did we do if we didn't know how to do that job?
You learned
How did we learn?
by doing and going to, well, back then you didn't have the internet or whatever, but
Absolutely, right? We actually, I myself actually worked for somebody for free till I got to know what they wanted me to do and then got paid.
sure.
Worked hard.
Well, you know what we're stepping into now?
What?
Union territory.
Uh-oh.
Right.
You love unions, though.
Oh, I do. I love to hate them.
Okay, give us your insight on the unions.
Well, unions are like what you were saying there, that you would work for free
Absolutely.
to
For training.
gain knowledge.
You either pay to go to school to learn something,
Sure.
money out of your pocket, or you can go to somebody who knows what they're doing and say, teach me.
Teach me.
Once you teach me what to do, I expect to get paid.
Right.
And the better I get at that, the more money I expect.
Right. Because you're increasing their productivity or your own productivity, which increases their bottom line, which allows them to pay you more.
Right.
And why wouldn't they pay you more if you're producing more?
But you know what the attitude is today? Pay me first, then I'll learn.
Sure. And then I might even show up for work, maybe.
On time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that society has gotten to a point right now where it's dumbfounding.
Well, it's
you
the
all-
entitlement mentality.
Where did it come from?
I am not sure. I have no idea. But
I mean,
it's
I was going to entitle this show "Two Old Bastards Talking Over a Bar" at some point, or actually, it was "Two Old Fucks" is what I was going to call
that
it.
was it.
Talking.
Two old fucks. That's right.
And
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
going to throw them all into the same bucket because we obviously have some
Oh,
very
yes.
courageous young people here
There's
that are
still
willing
lots of people
to
that
do
are
that.
wanting to contribute. Yes.
But what happens? What's with the ones where no, pay me first, then I'll learn. No. How about you learn first, or we start you at this wage and we'll increase you as you learn. Oh, by the way, I want to get paid to learn. How about you go learn, and if you finish a course, I'll pay for the course.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Prove it.
Not, oh no, you should give me a day per week to learn paid. No, your finances are not my problem. If you're not making enough money, you need to improve yourself. If you improve yourself and you add benefit to the company, you will get more money. Right?
Yes, if you're contributing.
For since I don't know, it started about probably 2016. This attitude started. I started seeing a lot of it. And as an employer, go ahead and call me rich, but I have worked my ass off, as have you, building our businesses.
Yes. Yeah. Working 14, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, like on and on and on.
Now
and then
your
you set
unions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody needs a union job that has that attitude, I think, because then you get away with it.
Well, you do, especially depending on the industry. If your industry is government, there's no competition.
Oh my God!
If Home Depot goes on strike, Home Hardware is still open.
You keep talking because I got to pour myself a drink.
Okay. Oh, now you're getting worked up. I can tell.
Keep talking.
Yeah. Well, like to me, unions are a legal form of extortion because you have a company.
Legal form of
A
extortion.
legal form of extortion. Like there was a time, I'm sure, at one point in time, way back, when unions were necessary to make a change, and of course, out of that came labor laws. And labor laws say, well, a person can only work so many hours, and if they work beyond that, then you have to pay them time and a half or whatever, and they're entitled to so much vacation. And if you fire them, severance pay. There's labor laws out there that everybody is living under, unless you're union. Then union, of course, is on top of that. And so here you go. You have a company, you're busting your ass and you're working, 26 hours a day and 8 days a week and growing it, and you hire some employees and that helps you. And finally, you got this thing going, and all of a sudden I come to you and say, I want more money. Well, first off, you hire somebody. So I come to you and apply for a job and say, okay, well, this is what I'm offering. So my choice, I accept it. You didn't put a gun to my head and say,
You accept
you
or
have to
reject.
do this.
Yeah.
This is what I'm offering. Okay, thanks, Carmen. I'll accept that. I'll start Monday morning. And then after a while, it's like, you know what? I want more. So now it's legal for me to remove my services from you and force you to deal with that
As a union.
as a union. Well, yeah, so if we unionize, right?
Right.
If it wasn't unionized, different story. But so all of a sudden now you got a few employees, we talk together, we join a union or whatever. Now all of a sudden it's like, I want more money. And if you don't pay, or we want more money, and if you don't pay, we can remove our services from you and hold a gun to your head. But you didn't hold a gun to my head to take that job. I'm still a free fucking agent. If you say, well, I'm sorry, I can't pay you more, whether you could or not, doesn't really matter. And then it's my choice to say, well, you know what? I think somebody's going to pay me more, and I can go looking.
Right.
And if I can find someone to pay me more, I'm free to leave. You can't hold a gun to my head and say I have to stay. You can't take away my ability to go looking elsewhere, but yet I can take away your ability to make income. So that to me is extortion.
Legal extortion.
Legal extortion because
Legal.
it's collective bargaining. Yeah, bullshit.
Well, I mean, I understand why unions came into place in the first place.
Back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day,
Sure.
right? When Henry Ford was paying his staff next to nothing, and people were dropping dead on the lines.
Poor
and stuff.
working standards. And
Absolutely.
yes, I mean, there has to be a safety issue. There has to be, fair enough that you can't work a person to the bone. So that's when labor laws came into be.
and people unionized.
Well,
They shut down, like with Ford. They
yeah, they had their,
all the employees got together and said, okay, we're not working.
and
You
it
pay
was
us more
brutal
money.
because the employers would bring in muscle to beat the
Beat
crap
them,
out of
yep.
them, and and whatnot. And so as a result of that, what became was labor laws, so minimum standards of employment.
Yep.
To do with safety issues and amount of time worked, so that you're.
Oh,
I
we're
guess
going
not
to get
being-
a lot of flack over this.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then so, you put that into play, like you said earlier about the Tim Hortons. Like, so they say they want their minimum wage, $20, living wage or whatever. So of course that happens, and it happens all across the board where there's unions, and that drives the cost of everything up. And all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, that $20 isn't enough anymore because the cost of everything went up. Why'd it go up?
Because you asked for more money.
Because right?
They don't get into a better situation.
No, they never do.
And the same with the unions. Like, I mean, they can go on strike, and what do they get? Better working conditions. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. You only have to work 6 hours out of the day instead of 8. Compared to the construction worker that's building a house over there who's busting his ass for 12 hours a day, sweating up in the sun. You get to stand around and I don't know, move that box there. And I'm being very facetious here right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Not all union workers are like that.
Well, no, for sure. I mean, Rebecca and I had this conversation last night. I was in a union once, and that was back in the 70s, and I was working for Dairyland, that's now Dairy World or whatever. But it was down in Burnaby on Government Street, and it was unionized. And I went from working in the peat plant. That was non-union, and I think I started at $3.75 an hour.
Peat moss?
Peat moss, yeah.
Okay.
Down in North Delta, there's a big bog there, and they'd go out there and harvest the peat, and they had this great big massive cage, and the peat would come in like hay bale kind of things. They'd chop it out of the bog and put it on conveyor belts, and then it would come and it would go up into this big massive cage, like a wire cage. It was huge, and it would get in there, and it would have heat that it would tumble, and the heat would dry the peat from the bog, right? And
This is back in the day of when Jesus was still walking, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah. They'd open the gates to hell to dry the peat. And so, like, when I started, you had to crawl inside this cage and hope nobody turned the heat on. And there was a door, and you opened the door, and you stepped in this cage, and you had a wire brush. And because there would be sticks and twigs and crap like that would be stuck in there, and you'd have to go and knock all this shit off, right? And spin the cage by hand. And this thing was probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet long and probably 12 feet high, and it was like octagon shaped or whatever. And you'd stand in there and roll this thing around as fast as you can because there's somebody waiting for production. And so I was on the dock, and so they had these chutes, and the guys that were the loaders, they got paid more. They got $4 an hour, right? And so they'd hold the bag and hit a button, and then out of this tumbler dryer, this peat would come down, tumbling into the bag, and a ram would squish it, and then you'd throw a board on top and staple it, and then throw it on the dock, and then I would eat 8 pounds of peat moss dust and stack it on a pallet, and then a forklift driver would take it away. So you're working this stuff, and I mean, oh my God. So when you're at the dock is this high, and they'd throw these things down onto the dock, and a big puff of peat moss would come your way, and you're just black, covered in this stuff, right? And so my uncle at the time was working at Dairyland, and so there was an opening there. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll go apply for that job. And so I did, and they said, well, you have to join the union. Well, why? Well, because we're unionized. Oh, okay. But the pay went from $3.75 an hour to $7 an hour. And I was on this bottle line. They used to have plastic milk bottles. I don't know if you remember those. When they had home delivery, and then you'd
Oh, you are talking when the day of God still walked the
right.
earth.
And they still had glass bottles. We still had glass bottles, but they had and advanced to these plastic bottles. Which, holy crap! After working there, I stopped drinking milk. Like, it was disgusting, right? So these plastic milk bottles would come in these crates on a conveyor belt, and you'd have to stack them in this washer, and there'd be like rotten milk and bugs, and you'd watch these things go through this caustic wash. You would set them upside down, and they would go through this sprayer and come back out, and you'd still see the bugs crawling in there, and as it went down the chain, right?
Oh,
So,
yummy.
Yeah, yummy. So that was it for milk. So these plastic bottles were very light, and they were going down this slightly sloped conveyor belt, right? They come out of the washer, and off they'd go down to the filler. And these things forever were getting jammed and busted up. So there was 2 shifts a day, morning shift, afternoon shift. Morning shift had a quota, afternoon shift had a quota. Morning shift was like from 8 till 3, and we were from 3 to 11. And then there was no midnight shift. But these conveyor belts would break down all the time because these plastic bottles wouldn't move along because they didn't have the weight. And so they would jam things up, and Dairyland had engineers that would come out and work on these conveyor belts and get them going again. And so whatever the day shift didn't get done would get added to the afternoon shift, to their quota. And so here we'd come on, we'd start filling these bottles. And then, of course, these lines are breaking down. So you'd sit for an hour or 2 while the engineers are working on this. You finally get back to work, right? Okay, here we go. Boom, 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 pumping these things through. Oh, it's coffee time. And it's like, we've only been back to work 10 minutes. We just sat for an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours. Well, no, but it's coffee time. We have coffee time scheduled. So they would stop. And then, of course, that takes it longer. So there was many nights when we would be there at 8 o'clock in the morning when the shift would come in.
Okay, so you had coffee breaks that were mandated
Well, yeah, because
after standing around for how long?
for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours while these engineers fixed the conveying belts that took the bottles down to the fillers.
Okay.
And so, like I say, you'd be sitting around because you couldn't work. So you'd go to the coffee room and have a coffee, and maybe you'd have some of your lunch or whatever. And then finally it's like, okay, they're up and running again. You go back to work, and like literally 10, 15 minutes after you finally got back to work, it's like, oh, it's coffee time. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? We sat for an hour and a half waiting for this to get working. Let's keep working. Oh, no, it's coffee time. And of course that extended the time, and then you'd end up working past. Your shift would normally end at 11, was supposed to, but of course if you worked past 11, then of course you're getting time and a half, and if you work past whatever time, then you're getting double time. And
So
like I say, there was lots of
Was this kind of what they were planning to do? That's why they would do it?
Well, nobody was sabotaging the equipment or anything like that. I mean, it was just the way, like I say, these plastic bottles were shit. They were just horrible. The glass bottles had the weight that they would go down. They never had a problem. I mean, there might be the odd problem where something would jam up, go out of timing or whatever. But
So you must have actually loved this job then.
oh, I hated it.
Going for the peat moss, smacking in the face.
Well,
and
the
cleaning out
money
cage.
was good because now it went from like $4 an hour or $3.75 or whatever to finally when I left the dairy, I lasted maybe a year and a bit there because what did it in for me was what I'll tell you about now. But yeah, you went from like $3.75 an hour to what eventually was $7.87 an hour. So here's the difference. The work was similar. It was labor intensive. You didn't need any education really. I mean, to do it, it's just put bottles on a conveyor belt or haul bags of peat moss off the deck and put them on a pallet, right? So it doesn't take any great skill. It just, you have to be physically able, that's all. And yet I'm making basically double the money. For why? Well, one was unionized, one wasn't. So one night, like I say, I was on the bottle filler, the bottle washer, and then took the bottles down to the bottle filler. And there was always one guy on the bottle filler. There was two of us on the bottle washer. And so, we were finally done. It was all, and then it was clean up. So you'd clean up and I went and punched out, because you had the old time cards, you punched them in the clock or whatever. And then I'm walking from there and through the plant, and all of a sudden I see Buddy on the filler, and he's cleaning away, and I'm talking to him, and he's not very happy. And it's like, 'cause now it's like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and he says that his son, or I can't remember, was his child, was their birthday was the next day, and he was trying to get out of here so he could get home and get some sleep before the birthday party. And it's like, well, shit, I'll give you a hand, right? So I hadn't, because you got clothing provided to you by the dairy, like a white shirt and white pants or whatever, and whatever kind of boots or whatever. So instead of going and showering and heading home, I had already punched out, and I go over and I help this guy so he could get out sooner, right, as he's cleaning up, doing whatever he's got to do. And the shop steward comes walking along and sees me with this guy, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm giving him a hand. His kid's got a birthday party tomorrow, so he wants to get out of here, so I'm trying to help him get out of here." "Well, have you punched out?" "Oh, yeah, I punched out probably half an hour ago." "Well, you're taking work from our brothers and sisters." And it's like, fuck you, I ain't your brother. And I said, it's my choice. I'm going to stay and help this guy so he can get out of here and go to his kid's birthday party. And that's the mentality of these guys, right? Just milk, milk, milk. No pun intended, working at the dairy, right?
and imagine the cost that it added to that price of that milk.
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, 2 hours sitting there on your ass waiting for the machine to get fixed. The machine gets fixed, and 10 minutes after you go back to work, it's coffee time. We just had 2 hours of coffee.
Right.
We don't need another coffee. Let's get this shit done, right? But no. So.
That is, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, when you walk, you just got to drive around any city, and there's 9 guys standing there looking into a big hole trying to figure things out.
Sure.
Maybe on some of these jobs, and I'm going to be trying to be politically correct here right now, there was a difficulty with it, but you see it all the time.
Yeah, and there could be reasons. There's the engineers having a discussion. Who knows? But it really seems to be very odd. I'll give you another example. My son was, when he was a student, he got a summer job with the city of Vernon, and so it was him and another kid, and they had a little pickup, and they had to go do certain things, and they were looking after some landscaping somewhere in the city or whatever. And so it was getting near the end of the day, and quitting time was 4 o'clock, right? So it was getting close to 4 o'clock, and they thought, well, let's just finish this, right? And so they didn't get back until like 4 o'clock or just after 4 o'clock, and they got shit. It's like, you should be back here by 3:30, get your shit put aside, and then wait until 4 o'clock, and then leave. So you don't work until 4, you get paid until 4, right? So you are ready to walk out the door at 4 o'clock. You don't work until 4 and then clean up and do whatever and then leave. No. You are done and out at 4. So
Regardless.
So if you're getting paid for a 7.5 hour day, you're really only working 7 hours, not 7.5, and yet you're getting paid for 7.5.
This is people taking advantage of unions. Or the
No,
u-
it's unions taking advantage of the
Advantage.
taxpayer or the customer, whoever the customer is, whether it's a taxpayer or the person buying that Tim Hortons coffee.
Yeah, because it adds to the cost of everything.
Sure, it does. Yeah.
When you got somebody that's, I'll just use this loosely, leaning on a shovel as a union person, not doing anything. Oh, maybe he has to wait for a backhoe to finish
Sure.
digging or whatever. But at the end of the day, like you say, they're standing around not doing anything. That job costs that much dollars. Those dollars are collected from you and I as taxpayers. Same thing as if it's a union job building a building or whatever, and they get paid for 8 hours, but they only work 6.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
So now the consumer pays for that.
yeah, whoever the customer is, and that could be the taxpayer or the person at Tim Hortons.
Where it could have actually been 20% less, because now you go to a non-union job, that property is going to probably end up, if it's a construction thing, is going to end up costing less.
Yeah, well, to me, if everybody puts in more than they take out, then everything works better. There used to be a time. There used to be a time.
Oh my God, that was when God still walked the planet. I think we were both still there.
I think so. Yeah, I kind of remember seeing you around.
I was chasing Eve.
Can you call her Eve today?
Anyway, Craig, it's been awesome talking to you.
It's been great.
I hope that anybody who was watching the show tonight liked it. This is our episode number 1.
Oh, guaranteed there's going to be lots that didn't like it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, with controversy, right? Everybody has it.
Absolutely.
And that's freedom of speech. We get
You
to talk the way we
betcha.
want to. You don't have to agree with us.
No,
If you do agree with us, great. If you don't, well, that's fine too.
that's okay.
And you're more than welcome to leave your comments in the comment section below somewhere down there.
Down there.
Oh, there's an ant on the bar. Got it.
All right.
Oh, sorry, I killed an ant. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. Cheers.